Welcome to another deep dive with us.
Yes, welcome everyone.
And you know, as a devout Catholic, I think you're going to find today's topic particularly fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. And it really is a beautiful way to kind of think about deepening your relationship with God and with your neighbor.
I love how accessible this way is.
Yeah.
It's something that anyone can embrace.
Right.
And it's really all about taking something that's already at the core of our faith, which is love,
Love.
and making that a more, I don't know, like a vibrant and constant reality in our lives.
Yes, very much so.
So today we are diving deep into a booklet called The Littlest Way of Love,
Right.
which is based on the teachings of a Capuchin nun,
Yes.
Sister Consolata Betrone,
Sister Consolata Betrone.
who lived from 1903 to 1946.
Okay.
And her life was just marked by this incredibly intimate and direct relationship with Jesus.
Yes, she really had a profound mystical life.
And so her writings are just filled with these incredible insights. And the booklet that we're focusing on kind of draws from two of her major works.
Okay.
One is called Jesus Appeals to the World,
Jesus Appeals to the World.
and the other is her biography.
Yes. Biography de Sister Consolata Betrone.
And what makes her teachings even more special
Uh-huh.
is that they were directly inspired by Christ himself.
Yes. She received many locutions from Jesus.
She did.
Direct words and messages.
So we're really getting to the heart of the matter here.
Yes, we are.
And what struck me most about Sister Consolata's teaching
Uh-huh.
was just its incredible simplicity.
Yes.
It's not about these complex rituals or extraordinary feats.
Right.
It's really about finding this little way, as it's called,
The littlest way.
to just constantly renew our spirit through love.
Right.
And the booklet presents all this in this really clear format,
Yeah.
almost like a catechism,
Like a catechism.
with these straightforward questions and answers
Yeah.
that make it easy to really grasp these ideas.
And to put them into practice.
So our mission in this deep dive
Okay.
is to really get to the core of this littlest way of love.
Yes.
Explore its principles and see how we can make it a part of our daily lives.
Very good.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What exactly is this littlest way all about?
Well, the booklet summarizes it into these three essential points.
Okay.
So first is cultivating this internal and ceaseless act of love. Second is, being cheerful and saying yes to every person you meet
Okay.
because you recognize Christ in them.
Okay.
And third is saying a grateful yes to everything God asks of you because you see his loving hand in all of that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
This idea of a ceaseless act of love.
Yeah.
That's powerful, but it also sounds a little daunting.
I can understand that.
How do we actually live that out?
Well, I think the key is to understand that this way is really about drawing your soul closer to Christ.
Okay.
It's about that union with him,
Mm-hmm.
and it's from that place. That intimate union with him,
Okay.
that a deeper and more authentic love for our neighbor just naturally flows.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and then also it's about embracing those challenges
Okay.
and sacrifices that come our way as opportunities
Right.
to actually express that love
Okay.
and to deepen it.
So it's not about the absence of difficulty.
No, not at all.
It's about how we respond to it.
Exactly.
And I know there's also a specific act of love that Jesus taught Sister Consolata to kind of put this into practice.
Yes, it's a very simple but very profound prayer.
Okay.
And he instructed her to repeat frequently, even silently, while she was doing her daily work.
Okay.
The words, Jesus, Mary, I love you, save souls.
Jesus, Mary, I love you, save souls.
Yeah, he really emphasized the importance of this constant offering of love
I see.
and this plea for the salvation of others.
It's so simple and so direct.
Yes, it is.
What is it about this prayer that makes it so special?
Well, a few reasons. First, it touches on the very essence of charity, which is, considered the queen of all virtues in our faith.
Okay.
And it's charity that gives life to both our faith and our hope. And it's interesting because faith and hope are important in this life,
Okay.
but it's only love that actually endures for eternity in heaven.
Wow.
So love is the ultimate goal.
Right.
And this simple prayer is a way to move towards that.
Okay.
Now, secondly, it's an intensely sanctifying act because it directly unites us to God.
Okay.
And thirdly, this prayer, with that specific invocation, save souls,
Right.
is deeply apostolic.
Okay.
It engages us in Christ's mission of salvation for everyone.
That's beautiful, the
Well,
connection between personal sanctification and working towards the good of others.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the booklet also talks about perfect charity
It does.
and how the church views its value.
Okay.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Certainly. So the church teaches that a true act of perfect love
Okay.
can reconcile us with God,
Hmm.
even after we've committed a grave sin,
Okay.
as long as we have that sincere intention to confess.
I see.
And it also has the beautiful effect of purifying us from our venial sins.
Okay.
And even more remarkably, even after a serious fall,
Okay.
if we truly desire to confess,
Hmm.
an act of perfect love can begin to restore those lost graces
Wow.
and help us to gain new ones.
It's like God's mercy is just so boundless
It is.
that even in those moments,
Yes.
he's ready to meet us and bring us back.
He is.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What are some other things that perfect charity can help us achieve?
Well, it can ease the suffering in purgatory.
Okay.
And if we offer it with enough devotion,
Uh-huh.
it can even obtain a complete remission of that suffering.
Wow.
Yeah. It also deepens that essential union between God and our soul.
Okay.
And it allows that divine life to really flourish within us.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
it helps us to increase our sanctifying grace
Okay.
and our eternal glory in heaven.
So these are some pretty incredible fruits
they are.
of perfect charity.
Yeah.
But I think we need to define our terms a little bit.
Okay.
What exactly does the church mean by perfect love?
Well, perfect love is loving God, not for what he gives us,
Mm-hmm.
but for who he is.
Okay.
You know, recognizing his infinite goodness
Yeah.
and truly finding our deepest joy in him. And,
Right.
and the booklet describes this beautiful journey of love
Okay.
that often begins with something called initial love.
Initial love.
Yeah, where we're turning away from sin,
Okay.
perhaps driven by fear of God,
Right.
and then we progress to progressive love,
Okay.
where we're actively trying to grow in virtue,
Uh-huh.
motivated maybe by that hope of heaven.
Okay.
And finally, we reach perfect love,
Perfect love.
where our soul is just completely surrendered to God.
Hmm.
We're loving him for his own sake above all else.
That sounds like a really high ideal.
It is?
You know, is that something we can actually achieve?
Well, it might not always be easy, but the booklet assures us that it is possible
Okay.
through our efforts
Okay.
and through God's grace.
Right.
And it even points out that something as simple as saying, Jesus, I love you,
Right.
in moments of difficulty, can be a genuine act of perfect love.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, and even that foundational act of charity that we learn in our catechism, that's also considered a form of perfect love.
So it's not this unattainable thing.
It's not.
It's something that we can strive for and work towards.
Exactly.
Now, what about our feelings?
Okay.
Because, you know, when we talk about love,
Yes.
it's often associated with these really strong emotions.
Right.
So do we have to feel intensely in love with God
No.
for it to count as perfect love?
You don't. Feelings are secondary here.
Okay.
It's really about the choice that we make,
Oh.
the intention of our will.
Okay.
And the booklet actually says that loving God, even when our heart feels cold,
Interesting.
can be even more meritorious because it's a pure act of our will.
We're choosing him even when we don't feel it.
That's powerful.
It is.
So how can we cultivate these acts of perfect love
Okay.
in our daily lives?
Well, we can direct all of our actions, no matter how small,
Okay.
towards the love of God.
Okay.
You know, whether we're eating or drinking
Right.
or working or resting.
Okay.
We can offer those things to him.
Right.
We can offer our daily sacrifices to him with love.
Oh,
And we can try to multiply those acts of love throughout the day.
go ahead.
You know, whether we say them silently
Mm.
or we express them outwardly,
Okay.
as long as they're coming from that genuine place of love.
So it's about making it this constant practice.
It is.
Why is it so important to offer these acts so frequently?
Well, it helps us to live out the first commandment,
Okay.
to love God with all our heart and soul and mind.
Right.
It strengthens our charity,
Okay.
which in turn perfects all the other virtues.
Right.
It purifies our intentions. It increases the supernatural value of everything we do. Wow.
It intensifies our fervor.
Okay.
It guides us towards God. And it even makes our death easier.
So it's really about transforming our whole lives, in the inside out. It's setting our heart on that goal of loving God and then constantly coming back to it.
Exactly.
So the booklet encourages us to start our day with that intention and then to punctuate our day with these acts of love, to keep that love alive and active.
Yes, very much so.
Now let's go back to that specific prayer that Jesus gave Sister Consolata.
Okay.
You know, Jesus, Mary, I love you, save souls.
Yes.
Why a formula?
Well, formula can help to focus our thoughts and articulate our desires.
Okay.
And it also aligns with the tradition of our church.
Okay, yeah.
You know, which uses specific prayers and invocations in the liturgy and in private devotions to guide our prayer.
So it's not just this random thing.
Right,
it's rooted in tradition.
Yes.
What's the specific significance of this particular formula?
Well, it has both intrinsic and extrinsic value.
Okay.
Intrinsically, it expresses that perfect and pure love, encompassing love for Jesus and Mary,
Right.
and extending it to our neighbor through that petition to save souls.
Mm-hmm.
And extrinsically, its value is increased because it came directly from Jesus.
Wow.
You know, so it has that special power.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's reflected in the promises he made to Sister Consolata.
Now, I can imagine some people might feel like repeating the same formula could become monotonous.
Sure, I can understand that.
How does the booklet address that concern?
Well, it acknowledges that possibility.
Okay.
But it reminds us that the Holy Spirit works differently in every soul.
Right.
And we have freedom in our expressions of prayer.
Okay.
But it also points out that this particular formula can be less mentally taxing than constantly trying to come up with new prayers.
Okay.
It helps us to develop a habit of love. And it doesn't hinder the deepening of that love.
Right.
And you know, other prayers like the Rosary are still encouraged.
Okay.
This doesn't replace that.
So it's like an addition.
It's an addition.
Not a replacement.
Not a replacement.
How does this specific formula help us to live out this idea of a ceaseless act of love?
Well, it acts as a constant anchor for our heart and mind.
Okay.
Keeping us focused on that perfection of love, you know, with Jesus, Mary, and the salvation of souls as the object of that love.
Right.
So it's a tool to practice ceaseless love.
Okay.
But it emphasizes that the internal act of love is what's most important.
Okay.
You know, even mechanical repetition can be a grace, especially in times of dryness or struggle.
I see.
And ultimately, Jesus values the love that's present in each moment,
Okay.
not just the number of words we say.
That's good to remember.
It is.
Because sometimes I think we can get caught up in, you know, saying a certain number of prayers or doing things a certain way.
Yeah.
But it's really about the heart.
It is about the heart.
Now, I understand there are also indulgences associated with this prayer.
There are.
Can you tell us about that?
So the prayer, Jesus, Mary, I love you, save souls, has a partial indulgence of 300 days,
Okay.
granted by Cardinal Fossati.
Okay.
But the booklet reminds us that the internal act of perfect love itself is the indulgence of indulgences.
That's beautiful.
It is.
But it's important to remember that this act of love must be offered with a sincere desire for perfection.
Yes, it must.
It can't just be empty words.
Exactly.
Now, the booklet also introduces this concept of the virginity of the ceaseless act of love.
Right.
What does that mean?
Well, it refers to keeping our spirit free from anything that could distract us from loving God. You know, so it's about being uncluttered and focused on Him.
So how do we cultivate this virginity?
Well, it involves a threefold discipline
Okay.
of the spirit, the tongue, and the heart.
Okay.
So virginity of the spirit means being watchful over our thoughts and rejecting those useless thoughts that distract us from God.
What kind of thoughts are we talking about?
Well, you know, thoughts that dwell on the past or the future.
Okay.
Thoughts that don't pertain to our present duties.
Right.
Unnecessary worries.
Okay.
Self-centered thoughts. Dwelling on criticisms or failures.
Okay.
You know, those kind of things that just clutter our mind.
So it's about constantly redirecting our thoughts back to God.
Yes, it is.
And what about the tongue?
Well, virginity of the tongue means being mindful of our speech,
Okay.
avoiding idle chatter, or words that aren't necessary for our duties or for charity.
Right. So really thinking before we speak.
Exactly.
And choosing our words carefully.
Yes.
And then lastly, the heart.
Yes. Virginity of the heart involves guarding against curiosity
Okay.
about other people's lives and refusing those purely human satisfactions,
Okay.
finding our contentment in God alone.
So it's about detaching from worldly things
It is.
and finding our fulfillment in God.
Exactly.
Wow, this is quite a discipline. What's the ultimate goal of this threefold virginity?
Well, it's to help us reach a greater perfection of love.
Okay.
by removing those distractions and imperfections
Okay.
that hinder our union with God.
And it sounds like silence plays a big part in this.
Yes, both interior and exterior silence,
Mm.
interior stillness of the mind,
Okay.
and prudent silence in our speech.
So it's about creating that space
Yes.
to hear God's voice.
Exactly.
Now, is this something that's actually attainable?
Well, we're human.
Right.
We're imperfect.
We're going to make mistakes.
We are.
So how can we strive for this?
Well, the booklet says it's possible with God's grace.
Okay.
And it's really the effort that matters.
Okay.
We don't have to be perfect,
Right.
but we have to make the effort.
To constantly redirect our thoughts and our words
Yes.
and our actions towards God.
Exactly.
Now, how does this virginity of love relate to this idea of a ceaseless act of love?
Well, they're interconnected. Virginity of love creates that inner space for ceaseless love.
Right.
And ceaseless love helps us to cultivate virginity,
Okay.
because we're constantly turning our attention to God.
So they support each other.
They do.
Now, the wording virginity of a ceaseless act of love
Yes.
is very specific.
Right?
Is there a difference between that and just saying virginity of love?
Well, the booklet suggests that they're essentially the same.
Okay.
But that phrase, virginity of a ceaseless act of love,
Mm-hmm.
which Jesus used,
Okay.
might emphasize that we need to direct that purity of spirit
Okay.
specifically towards this ongoing love and devotion
Okay.
to God.
And why the emphasis on excluding even good thoughts?
Well, because even good thoughts can distract us
Okay.
from the present moment.
Okay.
If we're dwelling on future plans or possibilities,
Okay.
we're not fully present to God right now.
That makes sense.
And the booklet also points out that good thoughts can sometimes have this subtle self-interest or complacency that can hinder our pure love for God.
I see. So it's about keeping our motives pure.
Yes.
And really focusing on God for his own sake.
Exactly.
Now, there's also the mention of a vow of virginal love.
Right.
What is that?
Well, it's a commitment to refrain from any thought, word, or deed
Okay.
that's not aimed at loving God in a virginal and ceaseless way.
Okay.
So it's basically a more formal way
Okay.
of expressing that desire for ceaseless love
Okay.
that we've been talking about.
So it's like taking it to the next level.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the second core principle of the Littlest Way is saying yes to everything with thanksgiving.
Yes.
To whom are we saying yes?
To God,
Okay.
to our Creator,
Uh-huh.
our Lord and our Redeemer.
And what does this yes include?
It's an acceptance of His divine will,
Okay.
both in our will and in our emotions,
Go.
and especially as it relates to our growth in holiness.
Okay.
It's following Jesus' example
Right.
of always saying yes with a willing heart.
So it's not just about obeying.
No.
It's about embracing it with joy.
Yes.
Exactly.
And what about suffering?
Well, it also means accepting the suffering that comes our way,
Okay.
not seeking it out,
Right.
but accepting it when God sends it
Okay.
as a gift from his loving hand.
Okay, so it's trusting in His plan even when it's difficult.
Yes.
Saying yes to everything.
Right.
That sounds so absolute.
It does.
What does that actually look like in practice?
It means having no reservations
Okay.
in aligning our heart and actions with God's will.
Okay.
And that includes the big things and the small things.
Right.
It means accepting the things that we like
Right.
and the things we don't like.
Okay.
Embracing both the joys and the sorrows, the good times and the bad times.
So it's about a complete surrender
Yes, it is.
to God's plan.
Yes.
How can we live out this, yes, faithfully in our everyday lives?
Well, we can do it by observing God's commandments,
Okay.
by fulfilling our daily duties,
Okay.
by responding to grace.
By cultivating small acts of virtue,
Oh, okay.
by accepting God's choices moment by moment, and by accepting those daily trials that He sends us.
So it's about bringing it into every aspect of our life.
Exactly.
Not just the big decisions,
Right.
but those little moments too.
Yes.
Why this emphasis on a grateful yes?
Because it means accepting God's will without complaining.
Okay.
With love, with joy, with gratitude, even when it's hard.
But why gratitude, especially in the face of suffering?
Because God's choices are always expressions of His love.
Okay.
They're always for our good.
Okay.
Even if we can't see it right away. And suffering can actually be a sign of His special love for us.
Interesting.
It's an opportunity to show our love,
Okay.
to be purified, to grow in holiness, and even to participate in the salvation of souls.
That's a really different way of looking at suffering.
It is.
Now, what about our human emotions?
Okay.
If we experience sadness or grief, Are those contrary to saying yes to everything?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's natural to feel those emotions.
Right.
But our underlying will
Right.
should remain submitted to God.
Okay.
We can feel the pain, but our acceptance of his will should remain firm.
So it's about that deeper level of trust.
Yeah.
Now, what about situations where someone feels victimized?
Okay.
How does this yes to everything apply there?
Well, it doesn't mean that we have to seek out being a victim.
Okay.
But by practicing this yes,
Mm-hmm.
we achieve this perfect way of the victim,
Okay.
where we're united with Christ in his suffering through our unwavering acceptance of God's will.
So it's about finding meaning in our suffering.
Yes.
And uniting it with Christ's suffering
Exactly.
for the good of others.
Yes.
Now, the littlest way of love is also described as being very apostolic.
It is.
How does this personal way of love connect with outreach to others?
Well, true love has this inherent zeal for others. And this littlest way combines that love for God with the desire for the salvation of souls.
Okay.
So it's naturally apostolic.
Where does this apostolic nature come from?
Well, firstly, it draws us into intimacy with Jesus.
Okay.
And he himself promised that this intimacy would lead to the salvation of souls.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, that formula, Jesus, Mary, I love you, save souls,
Right.
combines contemplation and action,
Right.
love for God and love for neighbor.
Uh-huh.
Thirdly, Jesus directly connected the act of love with a prayer for souls.
Okay.
And finally, Jesus made promises to Sister Consolata
Okay.
about the effectiveness of this way for converting souls.
So it's not just about our own personal piety.
No, it's not.
It's about drawing on that love for God
Yes.
to then reach out to others.
Exactly.
And how does saying yes to everything fit into this apostolic dimension?
Well, it means accepting God's plan for the salvation of souls,
Okay.
even when we don't understand it,
Right.
or even when it involves suffering. And it becomes a witness to our faith
Okay.
and a cooperation with God's redemptive work.
So it's our small part
Yes,
in God's much bigger plan.
exactly.
Now, you use the term universal apostolate.
Yes.
Why universal?
Because that petition, save souls,
Uh-huh.
has no limits.
Okay.
It includes all souls everywhere
Mm.
and throughout all time
Wow.
and through the littlest way.
Okay.
We extend our love, our prayers, our sufferings
Mhm.
to everyone.
Okay.
It's like Sister Consolata said, all the love and all the sorrows for all the souls.
That's powerful.
It is.
And it also includes those in purgatory.
Yes, it does.
So this little way practiced by individual souls
Yes.
can really have this ripple effect throughout the world
It can.
and even beyond.
Even beyond.
Now let's talk about the littlest souls.
Okay.
Who are they?
Well, they're the ones who feel called to follow this way
Okay.
that Jesus revealed to Sister Consolata.
Do they need a special vocation?
Well, first and foremost, they have that general Christian vocation
Okay.
to love God
Right.
and to use their gifts for good.
Okay.
But this way helps them to live out that vocation more fully
Okay.
and to grow in perfect love.
Okay.
And Sister Consolata received this insight that these souls were specially invited by Jesus to this life of love.
Okay.
And it's Jesus who gives them the grace to persevere in it.
So it's a special calling.
It is.
Are there many of these littlest souls?
Well, only Jesus knows for sure,
Okay.
but he knows who belongs to him
Right.
and who desires to love him this way.
Okay.
And the booklet encourages us to want to discover them
Okay.
and to rejoice in their growth.
So we should be looking for these souls.
Yes, in a way.
Now, if someone feels drawn to this way,
Uh-huh.
what do they need to do to become one of these littlest souls?
Well, there aren't any formalities.
Okay.
You know, there's no initiation, no insignia, no special groups to
So
join.
it's open to anyone
It is.
who feels called to it.
Yes.
But what about consecration?
Okay.
Is that required?
Well, it's natural for a soul who's drawn to this path, host speaker,